Welcome all you Farm Simulator 25 fanatics. Welcome to our first series for Fantasy Farmer. We're going to dive deep into Farm Simulator 25 and we're going to do some, role playing, and this is kind of going to tell you, we're going to talk a lot about the equipment, about the farm setups. Being a former farmer myself, I can kind of go in and talk about a lot of that stuff in a little bit more in depth and kind of get you to learn how what really farms are all about. We are in the Midwest and in the hill country of Ohio, so this first farm that we've picked out is very similar to what we would farm out here in the hills. We'll do this introduction. This farm here is the map that we picked is the Angela Whispering Hollow farm or Hollow map. Like I said, it's very hilly. We're going to go and we'll look at the layout. First thing I did is after I took this farm, I went in, and you'll notice if you've ever looked at that layout, the fields, in true form, you're going to farm all the way as much of that ground as you can. So all the loose space that was on the outside edges, we tilled that all in and got that to farmable space. I've already limed everything here to try to get it in. We're working in precision farming. If you look up here at the top, this field to the right is planted in wheat. I'm not real in agreement on the weed side of this because generally you don't have weeds and wheat planted in October. But there were several fields in here to start with, and if you notice now, it's all one big large wheat field. We'll pull into our farmyard. This setup's kind of what I would consider a generational farm. For me, this is how I kind of looked and grew up. What I today would be preferred, I'd like to be involved in if I was still farming today. But this would be a small farm, generational, hand-me-downs, some new equipment, some old equipment, but most of the equipment is older equipment. More than likely, there's not enough ground. You're not raising enough animals to support a family. So generally, the guy would be, the farmer would be probably working an off site job, maybe in construction or something like that, where he could come and farm when he needed to during harvest and planting. Probably he's got a wife would be a teacher or something like that would be bringing in the insurance and bringing in that income. And hopefully the children would be involved, but you never know with all that. But we'll walk through the layout here. We've got just a small hog patch. This pen is, we got Burks in it right now. Just different sheds. We'll go through all the equipment as we get to use it. As you can see, I'm a red guy. I love my Case IH. We do have some green here and there. Everything. We'll talk about each piece of equipment as we go through it. And this one here, we put the house into the shop side of it. I always liked that idea. It was kind of nice having it like that, having it back to the shop right there. An older building, cattle feed lot, just in this monoslope building here. Those cattle there. One silo, three grain bins. Back to an old corn crib and other product bins and for herbicide or water for herbicide in 28. That's kind of the layout. You look at the overall map, you can see what we're farming is in the green. So that's our farm ground right there, and it's not a huge amount of acreage. Hence, that's why we don't have we're not running huge amount of equipment. So right now where we're at, we're here at 1st April. We would hope to be doing some spring tillage right now. It's generally this clayer ground. It's a little wetter, so you're not going to be able to do a lot of the corn planting as early as a lot of the other places. Heck, I planted corn in June before, so it's we're going to try to do the best we can right here using the map we've got. So we're going to go ahead and we'll get this 7240. The 7240s, that 72 series, the 71 series, they come out, 71s I believe, the 7110s up to the 7150s I believe come out in 89. That was the first Magnum tractor. That was, to me, they are a terrific look tractor. Plenty of power and highly dependable. And so I was always liked those. Always wanted the 7110 or 7120. Those were always, to me, the nice style tractor. And they're still today, if you look at the auction prices on them, they've just really went through the roof again on those. So this one right here, we've got an Oliver disc we're putting on the back of it, and I'll tell you that we will use a lot of AI on this. We're going to let the AI workers do a lot of this stuff because we're going to move around a lot, and so we'll let the AI do a lot of this, and if they will do some of this stuff, they won't. But so we'll go ahead and do this part here ourselves, and a lot of it, since we went and I used the field cultivator, wide one, to do the outside edges, it seems to be that when we go back and do this tillage or this disking or even a field cultivator in this chisel ground, it will not let us do that anymore, just because it's been split up. And there again, this was two different fields here that we put together. So we're going to go in there and get this thing disked up the best that we can, and then we're going to start corn planting as soon as we can on all this right here, and then we'll go from there. And when I was a kid, that was always the tillage side of it was always my favorite. You going out there and disking and smelling the dirt, I think was always my favorite thing. And when I grew up, my grandparents, both sides, still had the one grandfather still farmed with an H and a MTA and farm all the international side, and so to me, that's, as a kid, that's what I knew, and so I've always liked the international stuff, and so that's why you'll see on this first map here that we're doing, and this series is going to take us probably about 5-year episode wise, so it'll probably be about 30 or 40 episodes, and we'll try to keep the episodes down to 20 minutes to a half hour. Nothing crazy. But when you're disking with those old tricycle tractors, we've got an H up there in the building right there. We'll show you. It's a different animal, especially over plowed ground, because that beats you to death, and sometimes you think you're going to fall off of there. And you're not running a very big disc. I mean, pulling a 6 or 7 foot, 8 foot drag disc for those H's would be about all you'd ever want to do. And back in the day, that they wasn't running any duals on any of those, so you had to make sure that it was in pretty doggone good, pretty good dry ground. If not, you was going to have major issues getting stuck. And the old timers back in the day, when they'd get stuck, they used to take a post and stick through the tires and put a chain through it, and then that would flip them over. But you had to be careful not to kill yourself, because you would take that post and it would come up and knock you right off the back of that seat. Grandpa talked about the old regular tractors with the steel wheels, and they would do that with the steel wheels and chain those to the steel wheels to get pulled out of themselves out of the mud. One thing about disking is it's hard to mess it up. You're covering ground back over what you already did, and where you've tilted up, and the spacings on the disc and stuff. I always like the 7.5 inch spacing, because it did a finished job on it, and that's what you was looking for. And usually in that clay ground, it was cloddy, And most of the time, you always tried to plow in the fall or chisel in the fall. But in the early, really the plowing was king until the 80s, until no-till really started taking hold, and the moldboard plow now is not widely used very much anymore. There's so many tillage options out there for people that you can use that you just don't need to turn that ground that much. Real life for me is, it seems like I always did my rows wrong. Now with all the GPS and all the auto steer and everything that's available, it kind of takes the guesswork out of everything. Now you press a button and it tells you where to go and takes you there, and you sit back and relax and lets it do it. Kind of took I think the joy out of farming. Farming always for me was your experience that you're out there, and I'll be the first one to tell you I wasn't a very good farmer. If I was, I'd still be farming today, and it's something that I still hate today that I'm not, but I sure enjoyed those years, and I wish that it still could be. But like I said, farming has changed so much over the last 30 years that it just is. It's not the same. Equipment costs they ran the small guy out of business. The amount of ground that you have to farm today to be able to pay for that large equipment is astronomical. Used to be you could farm 200 or 300, 400 acres and you was in good shape. Now you got to farm 2, 3, 4, 5,000 acres to be in good shape. The cost of land, that's probably the biggest thing right now, especially in our area. The cost of land is becoming huge. It is the small guy, just you're in trouble to try to buy the land anymore, to be able to go, unless you've got some generational wealth in there. You got to have some cash. That's why when I was building this farm here, I knew that I wanted to build a farm that was viable still today, that was something that you could still like and enjoy, and be part of the farming, and the kids would still have a place to go back to and still be part of it. But I knew that this farm right here would never pay the bills for a family. That's why I kind of said that this is a job that this guy's going to have he's going to have an outside job, and his wife's probably going to be a school teacher or something like that, that she's got insurance, paying for the insurance, because this piece of property here, this ground that they're farming here, is not going to produce enough money to be able to let them all live and survive the way they need to be able to survive. Now on the flip side, being able to work that job like that, both of them, you're able to have a little bit nicer equipment, because you're able to take on some payments that you wouldn't do if you were surviving off this. So a lot of this money that you're making off this farm right here, you can turn around and put right back into the farm, because you're not having to live off that money. And that was probably one of my biggest problems when I was farming full time, is that's all I did was farm, and we raised a decent amount of hogs, a few cattle, and but I was living off of it, and probably was not farming quite enough to be able to pay for itself. And so that was my fault back then, is I probably should have worked an off-site job also. But with this series, we'll talk about little things like that. We'll talk about some different farming issues you have today. So if you're not interested in stuff like that, you might not like these videos. But we'll talk about the equipment. There's a lot of the equipment that I really enjoy on Farm Simulator 25. I've been playing it since I believe 13, and there's just a lot of equipment. You look at the side view of this this tractor here, and even with this disc, I mean, that is a pretty awesome. The modders did just a terrific job with a lot of these equipment. There's some disappointing stuff. Got a Case IH no-till drill up there. You know, like to plant soybeans with it. That's the main job for that. But you can't plant soybeans for it. Same way with the Great Plains no-till drill. You can't plant beans with it, and I don't understand why they would not let you be able to plant beans with it, because, or soybeans. Let me get that straight. It's going to be soybeans. So here where we're at, you know, your crops: corn, soybeans, wheat, and wheat's not huge, not like you go out west, and then a lot of hay. You know, these are hill farms that raise livestock, decent amount of cattle. Nothing huge on cattle-wise. There's not really any feedlots or anything. There's some guys feeding some cattle, but they're not feeding in huge feedlots like you would have out west. So we'll look at a lot of this stuff. A lot of the equipment on here is stuff that I've owned, so I've got some experience on them. Some of the stuff I wished I've always could own and never had, and maybe one day. But we'll talk about a little bit of like stuff like that and different things on scenarios and everything. And got some new, this whole series and what we'll be doing in the future for these videos. We've been promising a lot of people for years that we'd come out, or I'd come out with some videos and just do some talking on all that. And so that's what we're doing. I won't talk all the time. We'll speed up. We will speed through when there's no talking, and we'll go through there, because I know you don't want to hear me talk a lot, but you don't want to just see a tractor drive back and forth. I don't know how much fun that is. I'm trying to farm somewhat realistically. There's going to be some things that we don't do realistic on here just because of time. Round bales, when we're baling round bales, I'll use an auto-load trailer, because I'll tell you right now, to take that tractor out in the field and try to load them bales is just so time consuming, and you're supposed to be having fun, and I'll tell you right now, it's not that fun. In real life, it's not that fun, especially if you're baling a lot of bales, moving those round bales out, and you haul them 8, 10, or 12 at a time, and you got a field that's got 100 round bales in it. It takes you some time. Plus, you want to get it out of the weather as soon as you can. You know, weather's not really a factor on hay on this one, but I think the weather really only affects, especially the rain, really only affects the harvest on these. We are using precision farming, so we are able to see on some of that right there. Like I said, a lot of this stuff, that how I'm disking this, is I screwed up from the very beginning on this field, because I thought the worker was going to be doing it for us, but obviously not. It'll take through this first series around in this first plant to get before the workers will be able to till, just because of how we cultivated these outside edges instead of using a chisel on them. I just used a wide cultivator to make those fields all the way, and you can see a lot of it, especially when we get in some of these other fields. You'll be able to tell. I think we probably added 20% more fields by doing that. And there again, in real life, you want as much of that field as you can get. You don't want to leave 30 feet all the way around it. So that kind of miffs me out on some of these farms, why they do that. I don't understand that, but I'm not a modder, so I'm unable to answer that one. tell I haven't disked very much here lately because my disking technique is not very good today. I know when you do the do the AI, a lot of times we'll start and do all the headlands first, and and typically you don't do that, especially in tillage. You don't want to keep running over where you've already did, so you're always doing the middle of the fields first. But when you're planting, it's totally opposite. You do the headlands first. But now with the GPS, you can do the middles before you do the headlands, which is really makes more sense because you're not driving over that seed again. I guess for our sake right now, we're not using any GPS. I enjoyed this map when I chose this map. Like I said, it's very, I mean, it's hilly in places, and it reminds me of what we've got out here, hilly. And when you get into this southern Ohio hill ground, it's not the best ground in the world either. A lot of clay. There's no sand up on these hills, so it's not the best quality ground. Now you get down in the valleys and the bottoms, man, there's some really good bottom ground down there that those guys fight over on renting it. When I stopped full farming in myself in 2000, 2001, the most I was paying rent for farms was about $110 an acre. Those same farms that I was renting now are well over $200 an acre now. And the cost of production has just went through the roof on what corn seed costs, fertilizer costs, beans. The advantage is I pulled out some old records, and I was selling corn for $1.97 a bushel compared to what it is now. Beans, I think I had beans, I sold some for $4.56 a bushel, and if these farmers had to sell that today for that, they would be calling bloody murder, because it's a lot more than that. Wheat for us was never nothing. It was never much of a commodity, just because in the hill ground, you wanted some wheat basically just for the straw. I mean, that was the main thing for us with wheat, was just the straw. I guess my specialty was hay. I enjoyed growing a lot of hay. Grew a lot of good hay. Put a lot of lime down, and we grew an alfalfa orchard grass with a little bit of clover in it, and that just was a pretty hay. Made nice hay to cattle. Just loved it. And it sold really well. I sold a lot of hay. Used to round bale 4x4 round bales with bought a brand New Holland 630 round baler back, I think, in '97, and that thing just made beautiful round bales. But they 4x4s. Two of those bales would fit in the back of a pickup truck, and back in the day we were getting $20 a bale, and could not keep them because they were just I kept them in a building, and the bales were just beautiful, and they were just really nice. And that's what I miss mowing and baling a lot of hay. And we'll talk there again. We'll talk more about the hay once we start baling hay on this series. And some of the equipment is similar. I tried to go through and find mods of equipment that I had. Some stuff I did, some stuff I didn't. So I got some stuff that's similar. I added some mods that I thought would work, and they did not work. And so there's some of the stuff that I was not able to do. And there again, some of that older equipment from the 80s and the early 90s has just not been modded yet. It might be, might not be. I wish I was a modder and knew how to mod, and a lot of that old school stuff is pretty cool. And I know on 22, there was a lot of stuff, especially on the older international tractors. There was a lot of stuff that you could get, and I really like that. There's things that I like about this. I don't like the feeding of the animals on this. I guess being that we raised a lot of hogs and a lot of cattle, knowing how to feed them and feed them right. And I think this doesn't let you really feed them. I mean, I look at the hogs, and here where we're at, at no point do you feed a root crop to a hog here. I mean, in a ration, you're feeding a corn, soybean meal, and a supplement or a mineral as what they're eating. So I wish that we could have more of a ration like that we can make, and there again with the cattle, especially in the feedlots, a lot of them's feeding shelled corn or rolled corn. I like the rolled corn a little bit better. I think they utilize it, but now studies are showing the shelled corn is just as good, instead of just having to use the TMR, which a lot of your feedlots are still using a lot of TMRs because of that. The corn silage you just get so much more out of it, and the protein's high, and it does last. I mean, you can get amount of silage you're getting off an acre per steer you're feeding is a pretty good number. So that's kind of the things that I wish that was a little different on the feeding. I don't get too crazy where we probably won't have any sheep or goats, or I probably won't even mess with chickens on this. This will be our first series. We'll change up some things. I know my next series plan, it's going to be big farm. I love my Kloss equipment. I've always loved Kloss. I like Kloss. I always wanted the brand new Kloss chopper. Never was able to ever have one. I like the Kloss. So we'll do a lot of big equipment on this next series, which it'll be another month or two before we get into this. And what's neat is we're filming this one right here on January 1st. So this is a new series starting January 1st for myself, and you guys will be seeing it in a few days after that, January 1st. I know you hear it a million times from everybody, but about liking and sharing the page. Being new to this, I guess I'm going to need as much as I can possibly get on liking and sharing and telling your friends, and if they're interested in it. And I'd say if you don't like this here, give us another shot. Give me another shot on something down the road, because it might be. We got something neat coming out that Farm Simulator's never. I've not seen a video done like this. I don't really want to let the cat out of the bag yet. It'll be in the next month. But after these series, I've got another series that's coming out that's going to be pretty cool. I know that a lot of you guys probably watch DJ Goham, and I like watching his videos. He's really good, and there's another feller that I watch that does a really good job. I don't think farm too much realistically, so that's where I guess I kind of want to farm somewhat more realistically as best that we can. And you'll see that from most of my series, and we'll probably do an unrealistic one. And like I said, we're going to do some unrealistic stuff on this. There's going to be some things that we're just not going to. It's a slow thing, so we'll speed it up and go a little faster on some things, especially fill and seed and stuff like that. So we won't mess with a lot of that. We'll get this first field dissed, and as you can see, it was a disaster. I dissed it terrible. I haven't been on a disc in a real field for several years, so I did not do a very good job. I hope everybody's going to have a good new year this year, and I know a lot of the folks I've talked to is excited about another year of Farm Simulator 25. Talked to a lot of kids, some adults. I do have a big series that I will tell you that. We've got an epic series coming out that there'll be about 8 or 10 of us on the same map. We'll probably do epic harvests. I know we're going to do a big silage harvest. We'll be running a couple choppers and a bunch of wagons. It'll all be put in pits. So we will do that probably within the next 3 months. That one there, I can tell you for sure, will be coming out. So that'll be pretty neat. We'll probably do a 2 or 3 hour video on that, and that'll be a big one. I know a lot of the guys. I have a little shop that I do for my fun thing, and a lot of people come in. A lot of kids we all get talking about it, and they'll ask how you do this, how you do that. So if you got any questions or anything on how to do something in real life, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll try to help you out as best I can. And I know a lot of the Europeans, they farm a lot different than what we would do here in the United States, and so I mean, to say there's a right way and a wrong way, there's just our way and their way. So I mean, let's face it, they've been doing it longer than we have, so I'm not going to knock what the Europeans do. They do a lot of things that I wish that we did here in the States. I'm impressed probably much as the amount of forage that they do over there, especially in Europe. The amount in England, the amount of forage that they grow and harvest, the silage, and especially on those smaller parcels that they farm, and the smaller fields, and the roads. If you watch some of those videos of those guys on those roads, and I thought we had small roads here until you look at what some of those roads in England are. This disc is an old Oliver disc, and if you know about Oliver, they were merged in, and man, it was a long time ago. My one grandfather always had a 2-bottom, I think it was a 214 for his H tractor, and it was an Oliver, and he always said that was by far the best plow that was ever made was that 2-bottom Oliver that he had. And the planter we're using is going to be a Case IH 950. They were made in the up until the late or middle 90s. The early risers then come after that, and they were far substantially better than the 950s. And if you remember back, the 4 rows I believe was a 400 series. These 950s are a 12 row. Back in the day, I had a 6-row John Deere 7000, which was a no-till also, and it was a right size for what we had done back in that time, and always wanted the 12 rows, but these Case IHs were never hugely popular where we're at, so they wasn't readily available, I would say, in the most part. We will, since the drill doesn't work on beans, we will be using this for our beans and our corn. Of course, the beans will have to be in 30-inch rows now, and the corn will always be in 30-inch rows. And then I chose this 2294 Case IH. So this is would have been probably an 86 model. So when the Case merged with IH and basically took them over, that at the time that was be a 2290 tractor. Well, then they went to the 94s and they turned them to red, and then I believe in 80, this was probably an 85 tractor. 86 they went to a 96 series, and which was an awesome series. I had a 2096, which had a Case Cummins engine in it, which was just a terrific tractor. 115 horse, pulled a 6-row planter and a 15-foot drill. You could just do about anything with that tractor, and it was just a terrific tractor. And that was probably one of the nicest nicest tractors that I had just always hated to get rid of it, and wish I had it back today. We're going to let AI plant this. We're planting 12 rows at a time. And as you can see, he's not wasting any time running 11 mile an hour on it. I do have the automatic buy on the fertilizer and corn, so we're not having to fill it up a bunch. That running back. I tried to run tenders on these right here, and I cannot get the seat filled with a tender. I have tried and tried and tried. I can get fertilizer filled, cannot get seat filled. So we're using a bin to do that. But now, you know, you think these 12 row planters is, you don't, you know, 20 years ago, man, if you had a 12 row planter, you were covering some ground. Nobody had 12 row planters unless you was a big time farmer. And now the small guys got 12 row planters, and you hardly see, you know, there's a lot of old 7,000 or 7,200 John Deeres out there that's 6 row. It's some 4 rows, but you just really don't see too many, especially at the auctions or even for sale that's coming up, that's those smaller rows anymore. And you know, a lot of the farm auctions you're watching today, if you watch them on YouTube and or even your locals, a lot of those are 16 row. The 16 row is kind of the norm now on planting. And there again, most everybody's using the planters to plant their beans also. Some of them's got some air drills, but here in the United States at least. Some of them's got splitters. Some of them's running 1631s, which that 31 is that splitter in the middle to plant those beans. So you're getting 15-inch rows on your beans instead of 30-inch rows. Technically, this planter right here will only plant at 30-inch rows, the way we got it set up right now. And if I was planting this and not using the AI, I would be using the markers. We're just going to use this as he's using GPS. I guess we're using GPS on this, but I would normally use the markers because that marker will put down where you need to drive. And you'll put that center of that tractor right in the middle of that marker row, and that's more important just when you're harvesting. Because you want to make sure you get in those rows right, because if you get off that road just a little bit, that head on that corn head on that combine will miss those rows if you're not careful. But these Case IH, these 20 series tractors, if you're an international guy, and I wish I was an international historian, but I am not. When the Case takeover merger type thing happened, the 88 series, which we'll show you a 5088 up here in a little bit, those were just a modern. That was the new modern international tractor, and my father still today will tell you that that's one of his favorites. Those were just terrific tractors. And a friend of mine had a 5088, and they're just highly versatile. What you don't see a lot of is you did not see the ones with the front wheel assist on the front, the 5088s, the 5288s, the 5488s. There's some with front wheel assist out there, but the mass majority of them were just a two-wheel drive. But that was the product of their times. At that time, when they started making those in 82 to 85, the front wheel assist tractor was not. People were still making them, but they was not as prevalent as they are today, which now about everything they want front wheel assist on. So that whole 88 series, you go with the 3588s, the 3788s, the 6388s, 7388s, the what we called the Lizard or the Snoopy tractors with the long noses. Um, those were they're kind of iconic in my eyes. We were able to demo one, I think, in '82 at a gentleman's farm down the road from us. Heck, I was 10 years old and I was king of the world, and I think it was a 3588 pulling a disc, and it just to me was that's where it was at. And I'd never had the luxury of owning one. Got a few models sitting here on my desk looking at them, but and my belt buckle's got one on it. But maybe one day we'll get one of those. But the 88 series all those 88 series clear down to the 88 was just a terrific series. And probably the neat thing about International Case IH back after the merger in '85, they had actually had in the works for the new Magnum tractors, which would have been the 7000 series, and Case has kind of dropped the ball on that. They did not. They used what they had there for the next 3 years instead of really going and starting to use what International had already kind of in the works for these new Magnums. So, if these Magnums would have come out in '86 instead of '88 or '89, I think '89 is when the Magnums come out. They would have been 3 years ahead. And at the time, the 60 series John Deere's was out, and the 55s and the 60s, and still today, I'll tell you, you talk to the John Deere pures, those 55s and those 60s are just terrific tractors. Engines last forever. They are still, they're working every day. Dairy farm down the road from us, it's hard to tell how many of those from the 40 series clear up to the 60 series that they're operating with, and they work them every day. That 55 series, you'll see. I believe there's some 55s you'll see on one of our things that we do here. We'll probably use some 55 series, and I know we're going to use some 40 series. So, but we'll have some mixed tractors with some John Deeres, and I personally owned a few. But like I said, my heart is always back to Case IH. I know when I play around on this here, I got a 7810 that I really like, and I remember when the 7800s come out, and I got to see a two-wheel drive version, and they're impressive. So that was in the 90s. But back to the 88 series that was a short-lived series, and the economic times of farming was kind of rough in that area. Coming from the 70s when fuel was kind of expensive, and then interest rates you just couldn't hardly afford anything. And farm-wise, the small guys were struggling. The CRP ground, which was the government program where they paid you not to farm, that was taking a lot of the ground that the small guys were using. It took a lot of the ground that I was going to farm. 20 years later, they were still taking ground. So a lot of that small ground, they were paying the farmers a lot more or the landowners a lot more to not farm that ground, and so that kind of hurt the small guy, and that kind of hurt me always because you couldn't get enough ground, and that was my biggest problem because we had about 55 acres of owned ground that my grandmother owned, and only about 30 of that was tillable, and now of course I had my hogs and my cattle there, but I had to go out and rent as much ground as possible, and here in Southern Ohio it's kind of you got a lot of guys vying for a lot of little ground, and still to this day, and what you'll find out is a lot of guys are traveling. I got a friend of mine, I think he's in 5-6 different counties, and he lives up the road from me, and he's got to go to a lot of counties to farm the amount of ground that he's farming now. He's got a lot of big equipment. So I don't know, it's bigger, better. I always used to think, man, I'd like to farm 10,000 acres, but the older I get, the more I think this little farm that we built right here to start our fantasy farmer series is make me happy as can be. And I wish we could get back to that. We never will be able to, you know, because we're now, everything's bigger and everything's better. It'd be nice to be able to go back to this older stuff. Technology's changed so much. The older tractors, you know, a lot of the guys don't want them. I mean, your big farmers, if you look out there at these guys farming a lot of acres, they're not running old equipment. Most of them are not running old equipment. Most of them is running newer equipment, and so I mean, it's I don't know. You look back at look at the old International 1206s. Used to be able to buy them for almost nothing. You could get one at an auction, $5,000-$6,000, and heck, now they're $20,000 because they're being restored. So a lot of that older stuff has just went through the roof. And you look at just like this tractor right here, this 2294. You know, before COVID, that tractor right there with 4,000 or 5,000 hours on it, you could buy for $13,000. I just watched one listed the other day, and I think it was 19 or 20,000 with 6,000 hours on it. So the cost of the stuff, even the older stuff, has went up. We're definitely using GPS on this because look how nice and straight those are. I can guarantee you, if you're not using GPS and you're following that marker line, you look down through there and that row is not 100% perfectly straight. Mine were not. I can guarantee you that. Especially if you get in a 40-acre field and it's a long ways from one end to the other, and you're driving down through there, and you kind of get sidetracked. That's the thing with this larger equipment, man, the amount of ground that you can cover. With a 6-row planter, man, on a really, really, really good day, I could plant about 60 to 70 acres. Now, I mean, I had to be doing good. No issues, no problems, no mud, no breakdowns, and minimal movings. But, you know, you'll find out in these hill grounds, it nothing to have a 5-acre field, a 3-acre field, a 10-acre field, a 12-acre field, here, and you're jumping around everywhere. These 40, 50, 60-acre, 100-acre fields are just, they're hard to come by. And there again, like we said, when I went in and I took all the edges out on these fields to farm right up to the thing, and that's what happens in the real world. Fence rows, the amount of cattle that's being raised now is a lot less. Of course, the hogs have pretty much went away in our area. So all those fence rows that separate these pastures and fences, they've all been taken out. They have been bulldozed out so they can farm all the pastures that had cattle in it for the last 50, 60 years and never been farmed. Now it's all being farmed. The guy down the road, I never in my whole lifetime, I'm 53 years old, had ever seen those pastures ever farmed. Over the last couple of years, they farmed them all. And so, I mean, things have changed. What's neat about Farm Simulator is for me, is you can kind of think, man, I kind of did that in real life, and I sure did enjoy it. There's a lot of heartaches, and there was a lot of pain, don't get me wrong. The money side of it was probably the biggest pain, and you break down and you got $6,000 bill you got to figure out how to pay, and but there is some fulfillment, and there is some joy. There's sadness not being able to do it anymore on my side of it. But I think that on the most part, I mean, it's a very rewarding job. I think it would be more rewarding farming this small scale like it used to be, where you can actually appreciate and come in and look what you've done instead of traveling 100 miles to farm a 500-acre field. And farming now has kind of turned into more of a corporate world instead of that small business. And I think that's what would be nice to have it back. Have the small business side of it back. You're getting a lot of little weekend farmers starting now. It's got 10 or 20 acres, 30 acres. It's raising some hogs that they're free ranging or pasture raising, I guess would be the proper term. And you're getting a lot of that. And then the hog's still the show business. We were in the show hog business for a lot of times, and a lot of people know me from the Pietrin hogs. Back in the 90s, I was one of the first people in the United States to ever import them in the United States. And so we were in the show business for several years with the hogs, and probably enjoyed it the most, and was in the bust when hogs went to almost nothing there in the late 90s. My dad was always known in the early years for the Santa Gertrudis cattle. My uncle had since took it over. My uncle passed away last year, and my cousin now runs that side of it. But they still have the cattle and bale some hay. But I was kind of like the black cattle. Was like the Angus, like the little higher quality. They're again the show cattle. My claim to fame in cattle is 1981. I had the largest herd of Scotch Highland cattle in southern Ohio. I had 2. Now you look at the Highlands now is popular everywhere. Is petting. Everybody wants to pet them. Petting zoo. And I think in our heyday in the 90s, we might have had 15 at the most of the Highlands. Had the few Simmentals, some Charolais. Always had calving problems with them, so I don't really want to have them anymore. I think back about my grandfather. Both of them used to have, they had the hogs in a couple sows and fair them in a box and hope for the best. And might have a heat lamp in there for the pigs in the wintertime. And a lot of times they didn't only fair once a year in the summertime, so they wouldn't freeze to death. And so there again, hogs have changed. I faired some in boxes, and then the problem is those sows lay on those pigs, especially on those high dollar pigs. And so I bought 2 Hog Haven fairing houses that had 8 crates apiece in them, and I think I bought those in about the middle 90s, and that really changed everything. The survival rate was in the 90s, 90 percentile, and that is pretty good, and went to pretty much everything was AI'd back then. And even at that time, I think we were running about 95% on AI. Had a nice system, had a little bore stud. Like I said, mostly show pigs. Now you look at the show pig business, and it's as big as it's ever been. Used to take boars up to the Ohio State Boar Test Station, and when they used to have it at the Ohio State University still, and things like that that's disappeared now. That's a shame. You wish you had all of that back. I know my dad took bull down at Bell Valley, or I think it's Bell Valley, the bull test station. Used to test bulls down there. I don't know if they still do that yet or not down there. I know in I think 93 or 94, I bought a International 1066. That was kind of my first big horsepower tractor, 125 horsepower. And I remember taking it over to my grandfather's, who, like I said, his biggest tractor at the time was a International Super MTA that my dad had bought, I think, in like 76 or 77. That was their big tractor. That's what they did everything with. And I plowed a field in the back for him. I think 17-acre field with a Ford bottom Ford plow, and that had been the biggest tractor had ever been in that field. So that was at my one grandfather's farm. There was 2 different pieces of property there that had been in the family since 1828. My cousin still is there, and my aunt lives on the farm. My other uncle and aunt live on the other part of the farm, and then, like I said, my one cousin has the cattle still. But like I said, that farm's been in the family since 1828. But it was kind of neat to take that tractor and go over there, and I'd take my bigger stuff over there because they were used to the smaller stuff, and I thought that was kind of nice back then to have that bigger stuff over there, and I could cover some ground a little bit. think funny on these farm simulators, I think about how dirty these 20 series case tractors, man, they get dirty fast. I've got a 2594 up there, and we did some tillage. I did some tillage with it on bringing the edges in, and man, after about 3 passes, you couldn't even tell what kind of tractor it was because there was so much dirt. So there must be something on them to get them a lot dirtier than the other ones. Nice thing about this 12 row this case iron planer here is it's not as heavy as all the new ones. That you're having to have a front wheel assist and duals all the way around to pull these new 16 row planers. You're pulling a 16 row John Deere or even a case IH planer right now. You're running a 350 horsepower tractor to pull a 16 row planer, and that was a nice thing about the 6 rows. And heck, I pulled it with 115 horsepower with ease, and a friend of mine, he pulled his with an 80 horsepower, so you were able to pull those a little bit better. Well, this field is done, so we're going to wrap up this episode right now, and this is the Fantasy Farmer, and like I said, farm until their money runs out. Have a good night.